Laboratory, CSIR. He is an executed numerous industrial projects as multinational companies Samsung, NEC, Mega Aggresso, Narco, related to signal and data processing of signals for contact and contactless sensors and applications of near infrared spectroscope and chemometrics for the material component analysis of agriculture produce, processed food and polymers. Formerly as a researcher at the Delft University of Technology, the Netherlands, he developed wireless multi-rate communication systems based on Velvet Transform and digital filter banks. He has received numerous awards, including Metalcom Award presented to the most innovative PhD thesis work in the Netherlands in the field of telecommunication. He did his Bachelor of degree in EEC of Crescent Engineering College, MS in Telecommunication and PhD in Electrical Engineering from the Delft University of Technology, Netherlands. And heartily welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Yeah. Okay. So I'll share my screen. So I hope it's visible. Kindly confirm.
Yes, yes, sir. Visible. It's visible.
Okay. Great. Great. Okay. So this is a talk about a new technique that our laboratory has come out with for the study of food products and agricultural produce. Now the point is that it's the culmination of interdisciplinary work where a lot of different aspects of physics, chemistry, um, artificial intelligence, design and development of advanced photonics, optoelectronics, and even embedded systems are involved. So it's a multidisciplinary activity where a lot of my seniors and colleagues have contributed to the outcomes. So I thought it would be a fit topic for young minds like you. I mean, I believe you're all management students, if I'm right, Dr. Ganesh.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Management.
Okay,
management.
okay, great. But at the end of the day, I think even if one has an MBA, one would work for startups or companies which will be based on technology. So therefore, this activity that I'm going to share with you, the outcomes and research work that I'm going to share with you, is in line with your training also. Why? Because there are a lot of societal challenges, and usually they will require some technological or engineering output to overcome that. And it will be the graduates such as you who will be the bridge between the societal challenges and the technical solutions. So therefore, in that context, this activity will sensitize you to a new area of research which has a lot of benefits to the Indian agricultural sector. So that's the theme of my talk, and I hope you will have something interesting to listen to. Yeah. So I'll start with some background. I mean, as to why this kind of methodology can be useful. I have largely made my talk as minimally technical as possible, but please do bear with me that it will be practically impossible without bringing some basics to actually explain how different our solutions are. So therefore, there may be elements of technology involved, but I think you would all be adequately prepared in various ways, right from your school education to engineering degrees or other degrees, which may involve some science and technology. But feel free to shoot in any query that you may have. So I'll provide some context to our activity. First is a case study, I mean, where We were invited by NGO called National Agro Foundation, which is based in Chennai. So they were collecting samples from various farmers in various districts of Tamil Nadu. I don't recollect which area, but largely they were helping farmers in the horticulture side, because horticulture is a high revenue crop as far as I was told by them, and therefore the margins are very limited, in the sense that whether they have a bumper harvest or not depends a lot on a lot of factors, including the availability of nutrients in soil. So what they were informing us was that currently they were taking samples from a lot of farmers, and then they had to manually test the soil samples. So how it goes is that so they take samples, and then they measure about 14 soil parameters. I think it's somewhere in the later slides. And then for each of those parameters, they have to apply a different methodology. So for some, they do classical titration. For some, they use some advanced instruments like atomic emission spectroscopy or HPLC for various purposes. Some they have wet chemistry, classical wet chemistry that you may have done in your early BE or even in your final years of your school education in chemistry laboratories. But the point is that for a single sample, it takes them up to 30 hours to get the results for 14 parameters. And each parameter will involve a different procedure altogether. So therefore, it's expensive, time consuming, labor intensive. The point is that you have to have specially trained people who can operate complex instruments, maintain them, or know what wet chemistry is, how to apply the methods. So therefore, it is a very difficult process, and I think in a later slide, I think I'll have some, yeah, details like for a single soil sample, it takes 30 hours, and during the sowing season, they get about 700 samples from on an average of 500 farmers. And for them to complete their activity, it takes about 3 to 4 months. So these are all ground reality scenarios which we have heard from an NGO called National Agro Foundation. And these are the parameters that they test for. I'm sorry, it is 20 and not 14. So they analyze 20 nutrients, including pH, soil organic matter, soil nutrients like nitrogen, sulfur, boron, and potassium, phosphorus, calcium, magnesium, iron, and copper. So as you can see, different methods are used, like a pH meter for pH measurement, wet chemistry, titration for SOM, chemical analysis, followed by UV spectral analysis for nitrogen, sulfur, boron, chemical extraction followed by AAS or AIS, calorimetric spectrophotometer. So essentially, it's just not that even for a given chemical, you don't have a single procedure. You have to have step A, which will be wet chemistry, followed by step B, which will be some use of advanced instrumentation. So therefore, it's a very complex procedure, but something which is essential, something which is very vital. I mean, today, for example, as human beings, for corona, they say have some immunity boosters like turmeric or pepper. But think of soil. A plant needs a healthy soil for a healthy crop. So therefore, it's a very vital and important activity. So the point is that there is no single solution available where a farmer or even people who wish to help farmer can actually measure the soil and then see whether the adequate nutrients are available in the soil. So that's the ground situation, and therefore solution is essential in that regard. One more example is that of the spice industry, which is again a very, very important industry for India, primarily because we export spice to the excess of about 1,500 crores. I mean, I'm not sure about the numbers, but at least for pepper, I think the export is more than 1,300 crores per annum. And then already some European companies have banned export of Indian pepper, not only because it contains a lot of cheap adulterants like papaya seed, but also because the pepper quality itself is of a lower nature, in the sense that you can extract oil from pepper corns, and then what is remaining will be a poorer quality pepper. It will not have the smell or taste of a good pepper, and therefore it is not accepted in various countries abroad. Again, these data we have acquired from a friend of ours. We are in tie-up with National Institute in Tanjavur called Indian Institute of Food Processing Technology, or IIFPT. So they have a lot of queries from Achi Masala, Sakti Masala, and Indian condiments, and Indian Spice Board, Calicut. So they have a lot of collaboration, and what they say is that the current methods are very, very invasive and time consuming. So what they do is they have a density based flotation test, meaning a good corn will have a certain density, and a corn from which the pepper oil has been extracted will have a different density, and therefore through the variation of density measurements one can see whether it is a good corn or a poor corn. Or more recently, they use advanced analytical methods. Our friends at IIFPT have gas chromatography, thin layer chromatography instruments, and another instrument called SCAR, sequence characterized amplified regions instruments. These are all very, very expensive instruments. Each cost about 2 crores or more. Some may cost in lakhs. Expensive, and you'll have to keep them in a very, very safe place with properly trained manpower. For instance, in IIFPT, they have people with PhD degrees to man those instruments. So it's time consuming, requires skilled personnel, and therefore inaccessible to farmers, most of whom are tribal people, especially with regard to the pepper as an important spice ingredient. So, and moreover, the adulteration in spice, if you move beyond pepper alone, is multivariate. I mean, in turmeric, in curry powder, you will have various red colored ingredients added. I hope you can just see the slide properly. In black pepper, you will have papaya seeds. In other spices, you will have brown dust or sawdust, which you can get from the carbon tree. And in coriander, they add dung powder. Chilies, they add sand, dirt, etc. And there is something called badi ilachi, in which they add choti ilachi. I think I've had badi ilachi in Rajasthan once, and it's large, and then you chew it, and then the smell remains for numerous hours. So it's a very expensive item. So the point is that there are different spices and different adulteration And even if you take something like honey, I mean, it's a, a very important ingredient in Ayurveda as an immunity booster. It's very, very important right now. But then the kind of adulteration that people do is mind boggling. I mean, I don't want to spend time on this today, but maybe on a different occasion, I can tell you in detail in the honey industry itself, it has gone to some extraordinary levels where they used the adulteration people, they used different kinds of methods. And then even the agencies which attempt to kind of pick the adulterants have to use some advanced strategies. It's almost like catching a thief. It is that complicated, and then there is a huge industry for adulteration and through for such malpractices. So the point is that in the spice industry itself, there is extraordinary diversified problems available, and more potently so in the export business of pepper and honey, which runs into thousands of crores. And therefore, we need some strategies with which we can address them in a meaningful manner. So the third example I would give is something you may all have come across, say 3 or 4 years ago, when Maggie was asked to destroy all their products. You can see in the right hand corner, it's strewn all over a field. I mean, I have seen pictures where they have used cricket grounds to destroy the Maggie products. They have used cement factories to destroy their Maggie products. Why? Because they found out some chemicals which should not have been in the products. Something called monosodium glutamate, which kind of gives the impression that even after you have consumed Maggie, you feel like you are hungry. So psychologically, that's giving the sense of Maggie being very, very tasty. So agencies found out that they had traces of MSG in Maggie, and therefore they were asked to destroy all the Maggie products. So the point is that not only such adulteration has consequences in the export industry or for farmers and the kind of harvest that we can get for consumers, because product with, if it's adulterated and if we consume, then we can fall in the food items that we consume. But also to the corporate, there is severe consequences, like how Maggie lost uh, a significant market because they had to prove again that they are complying with all procedures. By that time, other parties had come. I mean, like Patanjali and Nor started giving soup noodles, and their competitors like Yippee kind of superseded them. So therefore, Maggie had to reinvent itself with other flavors, with the pasta. So I don't know whether they are still back with the same vigor. That's maybe something which um, you MBA candidates can study as a case study. But the point is that uh, Maggie lost a significant market and revenue for a while because of adulteration. So therefore, I'm saying this to emphasize how important technology and engineering solutions are, even for commercial activities. So the last example I am giving, because it's my personal favorite, the Indian mission to moon. I'm talking about Chandrayaan, which I think is at least 15 years or more old. When India sent a mission to moon, and then our mission was the first mission in the world to find moisture in the surface of moon. So America had conducted Apollo missions in 1960s and 70s, where humans like Neil Armstrong landed on the surface of moon. And then Russia also parallelly had conducted many automatic, I mean, how do I say, they didn't send humans, but they had probes sent to moon in the 60s, 70s, but none of them could find water in moon. But the Indian mission to moon, Chandrayaan 1, used some spectroscopic methods, which I am going to talk about later, for the finding of water on the surface of moon. So the point I would like to bring forth is how is the 4 use cases or scenarios that I talked about soil monitoring, about monitoring of spices for adulteration, for monitoring of food products like Maggi for adulteration, and even for the measurement of substances or vital parameters in the alien land like moon or Mars. How do we go about doing that? The answer to that is spectroscopy. So I'm not sure whether you would have seen a spectrometer before in your life. I asked this question because I saw a spectrometer for the first time in my life when I was 31 years old. So I don't expect that everybody would have seen one beforehand. Perhaps you belong to a institute with various departments, and therefore people take you to other labs also to have a look. I'm not sure, but I'll assume that you have not seen one. So if I am kind of talking down to you, please apologize me. On the other hand, if you have some questions for which you seek clarification, feel free. Yeah. So I have Ms. Devyani ready for some question, or she has accidentally turned on the mic.
No, sir, no questions, sir.
Okay, great. Yeah, sure. So, what is spectroscopy? I'll go step by step. I mean, it will not be a business talk in that regard, but it's like a technical person talking to a business person. So, please bear with me. So, the word spectroscopy itself has the answer. So, like many things that many words that we come across, the spectroscopy word itself tells or conveys what it means. So it comes from the Latin root called spectrum, which means appearance or image. Even the word spectre, which is S-P-E-C-T-R-E, means ghost. Fine. So what does ghost have to do with image? The point is that it says something about interaction of light with matter. That's how you get an image, is it not? If I take a camera and take a picture, the light from the camera falls on us, it comes back to the camera, and then some sensors in the camera makes an image of that. So spectrum is also such a process where light interacts with some matter, and then it gets an image or a signal which can tell more about what the substance is. Okay, and the word scopy or scopia, which has Greek roots, means to view or to study something. So therefore, spectroscopy means using light to study something by getting an image or a signal of that substance. So that's what spectroscopy means. In the camera, we are talking about the interaction of light with a human being, or with the sun setting, or with a dog which is beautiful, or a small child. But in spectroscopy, what we do is we study molecular structure and chemical constituents through this process. So I'll explain this a bit later. So we are using light to study the molecular composition of a substance, and this constitutes what is called spectroscopy. That is all. If you have any doubts in this, please ask, because this is the foundation of the whole talk that I'm going to give today morning and afternoon. So I hope it is clear thus far. Okay, let's carry on further. So as I have mentioned in the examples I have given, in a laboratory, you have to use a lot of wet chemistry and other strategies. But with spectroscopy, see, just like you take a camera, you just press a button and then you get an image. But painting takes hours and hours to paint, is it not? Similarly, for wet chemistry analysis or analysis of some compound or soil or food ingredient, if you do through wet chemistry, through titration, it can take days to do so. But in the case of spectrometer, you can just place your sample very, very easily and then get signals, and from signals you can get some information about that. That's the advantage. So this is a small video I wish to play. I hope you can see. This is just to kind of open your mind further as to what is happening.
Give a brief introduction to spectroscopy. No doubt, electromagnetic radiations carry energy in waves. So when these energy-carrying waves strike a new material particle, they produce some change in the particle. The study of the effects of interaction between electromagnetic radiation and matter is called spectroscopy. Thus, spectroscopy is the study of interaction.
Yeah, so the point is that spectroscopy is a study where the light can interact with matter, and through that interaction, some signals will be acquired, and those signals tell us more about what the chemical composition of that substance is. Now, the question to be asked is, have you ever thought about what a light may actually be? Anybody, you can just please answer. Anybody, please? I can see quite a lot of speakers. So, or shall I just pick some name randomly? Okay, I will call upon our good friend Mahesh Kumar. So, have you ever thought about what a light is, Mahesh?
Sir,
Yeah, what does a light contain? So, you turn on your tube light or a LED light. So,
Yes,
what does
sir.
it actually contain?
something race, sir.
Very good. Okay, race. Good. So, when I am telling you that in a spectrometer, I pass light and then I keep a sample, I pass light to that, and I'm going to study whether that sample has adulterants or whether the sample is of good quality. Does it make sense to you? You can say yes or you can say
Yes,
no.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
It
sir.
makes sense to you.
Yes, sir.
So how does it make sense to you? Tell me, please. Okay, so that's precisely the point that I'm trying to bring forth here. That we say light is used, but how is light giving us the information that we wish to acquire? So that's where comes the quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and the concept of molecules and atoms, and how all the substance that we study about are nothing but uh, consisting of chemical atoms and then other molecular bonds. Okay, I'll try to give a quick example. I'll tell you how it all works. Just give me a minute, please. Yeah, so am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, great. So what I'm trying to convey here is that how the concept of spectroscopy actually works. Fine. So I'll give a few a small example. Imagine that I have a sample of powdered pepper in my hand. Okay. And now I am going to use a spectrometer to check whether this some small sample of powdered pepper is contaminated or is proper. So how do I go about doing that? So if I take powdered pepper, it will have a lot of chemical constituents inside. One thing I know for sure is that there is a compound called piperin, which gives that characteristic flavor and smell to pepper. Now, this piperin will be a complex polymer or molecular bond. I am not conversant with that. But let us say that it has some carbon atom and hydrogen bond, which one may expect in almost all organic substances. And I would like to show with a small model how it may look like. So I've taken a couple of balls, I've borrowed it from a young sun. So let's imagine that this is a carbon atom and a hydrogen atom. Okay, and they are linked through some spring or some chain. Okay, now what happens is that I shed light onto this molecular bond. Then what will happen if the energy of light intensity falls on this molecular bond, then it will start shaking. Is it not? So it will stretch, it can compress, it can go in that direction, it can vibrate in different ways. So this vibration, what happens is that it causes the bond to absorb some energy. Okay. Later, because of this absorption of energy, it will start vibrating in this manner. And slowly it will come back to its normal position. So when it comes back to its normal position, it will release some energy back. Okay. This is again a light which is being sent back, and this can be captured by your spectrometer. And therefore, by passing light onto this bond and by collecting what has been reflected back from this bond, I can know what kind of bond is actually available here. Why? Because not all molecular bonds will have the same strength and same characteristics. Some will be a freely moving bond, some will be a tighter bond. For example, if I tie a small rope between or thread between this, it will move easily. But if I take a different device, I really have to stretch very hard to kind of move it around. So therefore, I'll require more energy to move this, while I'll require less energy to move this. And therefore, depending upon how much energy is necessary, I can know what kind of molecular bonds actually exist. So that's how different signals, different light intensities are absorbed by the molecular bonds and reflected back. And accordingly, I can have a profile of what has been absorbed and reflected, with which I can know what molecular substance actually is contained in that product. And if it's a pure product, then it will have one kind of response from the light reflection. If it has a product with some adulteration, it will have a different kind of reflection and different kind of profile. So that's how we can distinguish between a good item and a adulterate item. I think I have made it adequately clear to you. So if you have any doubts, please feel free to ask. Any doubts so far? I think you can even type in your chat box.
Sir, it is clear.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, so that's what the slide is kind of trying to convey, and this is just one more example. I think this is kind of diluting it too far and making it making a very gross approximation or assumption. But imagine that light is kind of a football, and then matter is kind of polymer, which is like a football net. So when the ball hits the net, then the net will jiggle, and then from this jiggling we can know how much force was given in the football. So that's how I try to convey the interaction of light with matter to shed light on basically what the matter is all about. Yeah. So the point is that this interaction between light and matter can happen in various ways. For example, if you look at your microwave oven in your house, what happens is that I place a popcorn or something which I want to heat in the oven. The radiation, which is also essentially electromagnetic wave, just like light is electromagnetic wave, your microwave is also the electromagnetic wave. So what happens is that when you turn on your oven, electromagnetic radiations are passed, and these cause the molecular bonds to rotate. So they rotate around the axis. So this rotation causes some generation of heat, and that's how the item is actually heated in the microwave oven. Fine. But if you take other light sources like the visible light source that you can see, so in this case, there is no rotation. In this case, there is actually a vibration. Okay. Similarly, if you look at infrared, sun is a good source of infrared radiation. Again, there is vibration. Okay. So in the case of other methods like nuclear magnetic resonance, instead of electrical induced changes, the magnetic field of the light source or other sources induce some changes. So essentially what I'm trying to convey here is that there are different ways in which you can study a polymer or a chemical bond, and each one of them result in a different kind of application for a different purpose. So X-ray based study is one way of doing that. Infrared is a different way. Even a camera or a vision based study also is light interacting with matter, but then again it is because of a different principle. So that's what this slide is all about. So one more slide which kind of portrays in a different manner the interaction of light and matter. So the only reason why I have it here is to show you that what our eyes meet is the visible region. I mean, you may have heard in your childhood the 7 colors of light. It is not 7, actually it has infinite colors, but 7 principal colors, violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow and orange. So all of that is what helps us see our parents, our children, our students, our friends, colleagues, the kind of dress we wear, the red of apple, the orange color of orange, or the beautiful rose of a rose flower. All of it is in this small slice of region that you can see here. I hope you can see my slide, and it has the narrow visible region shown. So that is all is there that we can see. But what is available for others to see, for a bat or for other insects which see in ultraviolet, you can see it's a vast spectrum. It's an extraordinarily vast spectrum, and what our eyes can pick is just a narrow slice of that. So I just want you to kind of get grounded and then be aware that your camera based, vision based solutions are just a narrow slice of what is available. But there is instrumentation available which exploits other spectral region also, and one can benefit from that for various purposes. So that's what I try to convey here. And the point is that different kind of these spectra have paved way for different instruments which are used for different applications. I'm sure you may have seen the use of X-ray in a dental department, or when you have a fracture. I think some of the young men would be riding their bikes and then would have skidded somewhere and then fractured some of their bones, and they may have gone to a doctor and taken X-ray to check whether there is any fracture or sorts. We also have X-ray instruments used in airports to scan for any contraband item being taken away. The point is that I repeat that the spectra is not merely what our eyes can see, but it involves various other regions, and each region has certain instrument operating in that, and each instrument is currently being used for various purposes. That's how you see names like ESR, which uses spin rotation, IR means infrared, UV means ultraviolet, this means vision based, Raman, X-ray, terahertz. So there are multiple equipments, all which are based on the principle of light interacting with matter, and each one has certain benefit and certain purpose, and each one is used in diverse fields of application. So that's what I would like to convey here. So in this context, where does CIRI, the institute which I am working for, coming into picture? So that's the next theme of our talk, and I hope I'll have time. I think 10 more minutes. So I'll just complete this section, and then I believe it's still 9:45, is it not? Okay, then I think I have adequate time. Yeah. So where do our laboratory come in picture? So we primarily focus on 4 areas. One is image processing and machine vision, where we use for various purposes. For example, whatever the eye can do and pick, can we automate that? Is the question that these friends of mine are focusing on. For example, if you take one of the examples I can give is from the leather industry. So they make lot of leather, which then is given to manufacturers to make a leather shoe or a leather wallet. But if the leather has some kind of artifact, why? Because leather comes from a animal, and the animal may have some injuries, and therefore the skin of the animal may have some injury, and therefore the quality of processed leather may be compromised. So how do you actually find out whether the quality of leather is good or bad? So in this context, a couple of my colleagues are working with a camera, so they will spread the leather on a table, and then they'll have a moving camera which will scan the surface and then check whether it has some artifact or not. So this is one example of that. One more example is our colleagues went to a Bokhara steel plant, and then there the steel will be rolling on a conveyor. Hot steel will be moving. It will be red in color. But if it had some cracks, the cracks will be of a cooler temperature. Fine. So therefore it will appear slightly darker than proper steel. So they again put some camera on top with some protection to ensure that the sensitive sensors of the camera are not impacted. So therefore, as the steel is rolling in the bottom, they have a camera on top. And then if there is any crack or fracture on the surface, then the camera can pick that up and then they can stop the process and then remove that portion alone. So these are all examples of image and machine based solutions which our center has provided. One more is the near infrared spectroscopy, which is the theme of this talk in principle. So I'll not talk much about what we are doing in the context of NIR because in later slides you will come across that. Next is the usage of soft X-rays for various applications. So one application that our colleagues in our lab have come out, particularly for food processing industry, is for the sorting of mangoes. So the mango normally, especially the ones which taste very well, many times we bite the mango and then inside we see that there is some insect or the taste is different, is it not? Why? Because the insect has gone inside even as the mango was a small seed. So it was a small seed and then the insect has gone inside and the mango has consumed the seed and then a mango grows and with that the insect also grows. So there is no surface problem in the outside, but in the inside there is the, how do I say, we have the insect growing together. So how do you kind of recognize or find out whether mango is good or it has a seed inside? It is very hard, is it not? We cannot have someone biting the mango and then saying it's good or bad. So in that context, our colleagues had used something called a soft X-ray. Okay, so it's an X-ray of a lower intensity. So this X-ray will be passed through the mango and then it will be imaged on the other side. And if the seed is healthy, then it will have some shadow. And we can then qualify it to be a good mango. On the other hand, if the seed has some insect inside, it would have burrowed inside and therefore the density of seed would be lower. And therefore in the image, we will see only a light edge in those portions. So with this, on a conveyor, the mangoes will keep moving and then the X-ray scanner will look for mango, imaging will happen, and live we can actually find out whether the mango has some problem or not. So this is something our colleagues have worked on and delivered. And one more they have done is something for baggage scanning in airports. So they are able to identify various chemical substances and then find out whether the baggage is a good one or a improper one. One more is a terahertz facility where our colleagues have done a lot of work on whether the currency notes that we have are proper or not. That's one popular example that they have used. They also worked with pharmaceutical companies to design and customize various tablets. So apparently when you consume tablet, it takes some minutes for the chemical to be digested by our body and then for it to go to different parts of the body. And therefore they have to add some fillers on top of that to ensure that it doesn't get digested before it reaches the stomach. So therefore, how to characterize the process of digestion and so on our colleagues had studied, and then accordingly it was useful for the industry. So that is what broadly we at CIRI do. Specifically, what I do is, or what I have been doing in the past, is to actually use something called near infrared spectroscopy for the analysis of food ingredients, organic substances, polymers. So I'll give you examples of how I have used. So what I have done is I have come out with a lot of algorithms and mathematical models. And I also kind of ensured that these algorithms run on some cheap hardware. See, if you have an expensive computer, then it will be very, very hard for somebody to deploy or buy. Therefore, we are designing algorithms and ensuring that they are running on some cheap hardware. We also ensure that the solutions are integrated in the instrumentation or process chain of the company where it's going to be deployed, and ensure that it is integrated with the MIS or information management system of the company. So we are in the full spectrum of right from designing and development of the system, the hardware, the software, as well as the integration of the hardware and system in the customer's plant, and ensuring that it's also integrated with the customer's MIS. So that's what we do in principle. So we have, I think, more than a decade and a half of experience. This picture shows me and some of my colleagues. So that's the team basically. I think we still have some time left. Any questions you have? So if there are no questions, then I will move to the next topic, which is actually giving you some foundation or fundamentals of what is called NIR spectroscopy. Why this is important is because when I say I'm giving a solution based on NIR spectroscopy, it's important that you understand the principles of the technology itself. So with that in mind, I have a section which gives some introduction to this topic. So hope it will be easy for you to follow. Feel free to have, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot and then query me also. Okay. First is, what is near infrared at all? So a few slides ago, you have seen that this is the full electromagnetic spectrum, and then it's really vast. So if we go from left to right in the picture, I have the radio waves, which is what we tune our radio in the house, or television sets in the house, or even our mobile phones. They all come in this left corner. So as I move further to this side, I will have FM radio, and then the microwave oven. Still further, I'll have radar, which is used for various purposes. So right from in aeroplanes to find out whether there is heavy cloud in front of a plane, or to use in surveillance purposes to see if any enemy aircraft is coming into our land, or even as ground penetrating radar to check for contents below the land to find whether there is any landmine hidden below, or to kind of find out whether there is any oil contained. And if I come further to the right, then I have what is called infrared. So infrared, I'm sure you may have heard in your school days or college days. So the sun is a good source of infrared. We feel the sun is hot because of infrared radiation. So in the infrared, we have three principal denomination. One is called far infrared or terahertz, which is somewhere here. And then we have something called mid infrared or MIR. And then somewhere here, you have something called near infrared. And in the name itself is kind of a giveaway, because what is near infrared? It is the red region. I mean, so in the WIPGR, you have the light, essentially the principal colors of light. And then here you have red region, and somewhere near that is NIR. Then comes your red, and then your WIPGR colors ending with violet, and then you have ultraviolet. And then when you go further, you have soft X-ray, and then hard X-ray, and then gamma rays, and so on and so forth. So as I move from left to right, my wavelength of light source or electromagnetic source reduces. Alternatively, my frequency or energy of the electromagnetic source increases. Okay, somewhere in the vast spectra, you have a narrow slice called the visible region, and adjacent to that light, you have what is called near infrared. Okay, so that's what is available, and that's what we are studying today. So near infrared is a spectra that spans between 780 nanometers and 2500 nanometers. So that is all, it's a narrow slice essentially. Now, why is this spectral region very, very interesting? Why? Because practically everything that we eat, everything that we wear, that we use, that we sit on, that we consume, basically the polymers, organic compounds, food substances, agricultural produce, everything respond to this region of spectra. Okay, practically every of these compounds respond to this spectral incident of light of this region. Okay, and that's why NIR is very, very interesting and fascinating. Okay, so any doubts with this? I hope the talk is adequately structured in a manner that you can follow and understand. If not, please tell me, because perhaps I'll stop with this slide for now. So and take some questions for the remaining 10 minutes, so that we are all clear about where we are so far in this talk. Any doubts? So if you don't have doubts, and then I'll take some names and then randomly ask questions. How about that? I see some people on my screen. So I'll take some name here. So how about Miss Preeti? So I see her photo here. So do you have any questions? Have you followed the talk?
Yes, sir. I've been following your talk. It was pretty clear, sir.
Okay, great, great. Okay. So maybe I'll just take one more person to ensure that all of them are clear. How about Mr. Rahul Gowda? I mean, maybe he has a question. Rahul? Hello?
Yes, sir.
You have any questions?
No, sir.
No, okay. Are you able to follow the talk? Is it properly structured?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great,
Yes, sir.
great. Fine. So then I'll assume that that's a fair representation of the audience here. So I'll go on with the talk. I mean, so essentially, NAR is one region of the electromagnetic spectra, which is adjacent to the visible region. And NAR is spanning between about 780 nanometers and 2500 nanometers. And NAR is interesting because principal molecules like CH, OH, and NH, which are available in vast organic substances, food items, anything that we eat, wear, and polymers, plastics, and therefore we can have instruments based on NAR. That's a broad theme, okay. And applications of NAR, it is used everywhere from pharmaceuticals for medical diagnosis. In fact, you can have a watch with the NAR sensors and NAR light, and if you wear it, then it can tell you whether the blood sugar is okay, whether BP is all right. In fact, you can even monitor your heart rate and blood oxygen levels using NAR sensors. In fact, in the current climate, they say use a pulse oximeter. Maybe after the break, I can show you a pulse oximeter I have in house. So then show actually how the IR light is actually helping picking up the oxygen levels in the blood essentially. And it is also used in food and agro, in combustion research, polymer waste recycling, and even neurology and so on and so forth. Okay, and I think this is something I've already explained already in the sense that basically spectroscopy itself is interaction between light and matter, and then when light interacts with matter, then the molecular bonds stretch and compress. The stretching and compressing essentially results in absorption of light, and when there is absorption of light, there is movement of bonds, and when the bond comes back to rest, light is again released, and a spectrometer captures this light, and then that is the principle by which spectroscopy works. So I won't delve more on that before break, but very quickly, this is just to give an intuition as to how in different manner the light can actually stretch and bend. It can stretch symmetrically, it can stretch asymmetrically, it can bend. And there is something on libration, which is like how it's exercising, because it will go stretching in a different angle. So each of this can result in absorption of electromagnetic spectra in a different manner, and therefore you have different kind of instruments for that. So I think I'll stop at this point. I mean, maybe slightly earlier than planned, but I think I have a kind of understanding of the audience, and then I will kind of leave you to ruminate for the next half an hour or so, and then come back at what time? I mean, we are leaving a bit early, so maybe we can also start a bit early.
10:15 we can start. Actually, 11:15 we can start, sir.
11:15 we can start. Okay. Okay.
That's
So,
again fit.
okay. Yeah. So we can start at 11:15 and then have a quick Q&A to know whether you have any questions. And then the later sections will largely be the instrumentation followed by the use cases that I have practically worked on for the industry. So I think it's the right time to break. Yeah.
Sir, I have another guest lecture in.
Understandable. Yeah.
Yeah, I will go at 11:15. Then I will join here, sir.
Please, sure. So shall I just leave the session and then join
Yeah.
again?
No need to leave the meeting. Just you can switch off the camera on this one and then start.
Okay,
sir.
sure. Okay, yeah, okay. Thank you, yeah.
Yeah, everybody take break. 11:15 we'll start.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Sir.